paper ballots. So if there's any ever a question about anything, we have those paper ballots to go back to. So while we're dealing with many issues in government operations, I just want to mention two that we're looking at. One is the Office of Professional Regulation. That's in our purview, and they license people. And we need more population, but we have a scarcity of people to work with credentials and licensing. So we're working on how do we make it faster and easier for people. For example, somebody who's been trained in the Army as a medic, how can they then transfer that knowledge to becoming a healthcare professional in Vermont? And there are a lot of instances like that. So we're working very hard on that. And allowing people to practice within their full scope of practice. We sometimes, people get trained to practice at this level, but whoever the level is above that in that profession says, you can't do that because that will interfere with my ability to. It happened actually when we did dental therapists. We heard from the dentists that we couldn't do dental therapists because then it would leave the dentists to just do all the icky stuff and the dental therapists would do all the easier stuff. Well, maybe that's the way we should be doing it. I think so. The other issue we're looking at is our EMS system. They are in dire need. We're seeing people all over the state EMS system dying. There's a lack of volunteers. That's emergency medical services. They don't have the volunteers that they need. So we're working very hard. We just are passing out a bill next Tuesday, or the Tuesday we get back, that would change their credentialing. It would create a new level of first responders. We're looking at their funding and their training. There's no funding. We provide a police academy for law enforcement and a fire academy for firefighters, but we don't do anything for training for EMS personnel. So we're working really hard on that, and I think it'll go over to the House, and then we'll see what happens, because that's always kind of a crapshoot, right? But they're going to take it up. So anyway, again, thank you very much. It's an honor, and I will not be staying around here because Nader and I are going to quickly take off. If you have any issues, please call me, email me, and I will respond as soon as I can. Sometimes it's a couple weeks later, but I will. Thank you.
Thank you to Nader, Mike, and Jeanette. Also, as usual, Carolyn Partridge is in the back of the hall. She generally does not speak, but she's more than willing to talk to you one-on-one. So, getting into the more formal part of the meeting, and usually I make a couple of brief comments, which I will today. My sense today is that we are diminished. We have had taken away from us our authority over one of the central aspects of our community, our schools. There is no school budget to be considered today, and depending on the outcome of a piece of litigation that is pending in front of the Supreme Court, we may have very little authority over the school at all. And the school has always been, in my experience, really the lifeblood of this community. It's what we all come together around. And it's what brings people out to town meeting, too, because it is the town meeting and the Indiana School District meeting. I fear that interest will win. I urge you all to keep coming back and keep fighting for our schools, but how that manifests is anybody's guess. And the diminishment isn't just in how we run our education program. It's in our participation in our own democratic institutions. That is a bedrock of our system of government, really, but also our understanding of ourselves as a community. And I think we have been robbed of something. So usually I try to be a little more upbeat, but that's my sense today. That said, a brief invocation. Let us pause for a moment of silence and reflection. We are gathered together in civil assembly. We gather as a community in the oldest sense of the word. We gather to come together and try to make decisions about what is right, about what is wrong. Let us advocate for our positions, but not at the expense of others. Let us remember that there is an immense gap between saying, I am right, and saying, I believe I am right. And that our hopes, that our neighbors with whom we disagree are good people with hopes and dreams as true and as high as ours. And let us always remember that in the end, caring for each other in this community is of far greater importance than any difference we may have. And now the nuts and bolts, the rules of the functioning of this assembly. Robert's Rules of Order, 11th edition, is the basic rules of order for this meeting, except where Vermont law takes precedence. You cannot change state law, but you can change Robert's Rules with a 2/3 vote if you desire. An article must be moved and seconded by the body and restated by the moderator before it is under consideration and debate on the article may begin. Articles may have only one associated amendment at a time, and amendments may have only one amendment associated with them at a time. So you cannot have a third amendment. You have to return it back to the main article. After you've spoken once on a particular article, you will not be recognized a second time during discussion on that article or amendment until other voters who wish to speak on the issue for the first time are given an opportunity to do so. Division of the House can be requested by one voter before or after a voice vote. State law provides for a paper ballot vote on the request of 7 voters unless the town makes other arrangements. And again, before or after a voice vote or after a division of the House. This means that the moderator could ask you for your voice vote, declare the motion passed. Someone could request a division of the House. There must be a vote by show of hands of rising. The moderator declares the motion passed. Then someone can request a paper ballot. And the moderator would have to honor this request if the number of people asking for the paper ballot meets the minimum requirements. Debate is cut off by a motion to call the question and a 2/3 vote to do so. I usually ask for that on a voice vote, but if it's at all close, it's hard for me to decide 2/3, 1/3 on a voice vote. So we call the question and I can't make it out, we'll go to the division. Also, the point at which you are right to request either a division of the House or a ballot is ended is when another article is on the floor, the succeeding article is on the floor, and it is on the floor when it is restated by the moderator. So up to that point, you can request for a paper ballot or division of the House, but once a new article has been stated, that cuts off discussion on the prior article. All motions, remarks, and discussion must be addressed to the moderator. I will do my best to recognize you in the order that you have raised your hands. I get a little bit of tunnel vision, so sometimes I don't necessarily see the people on the card numbers, but hop up and down and wave and I'll have you notice. You must be recognized to speak, even to call the question. After being recognized, please stand up if you are able. Wait for a microphone. If you have one runner, Ira is running a microphone today. You can conscript someone else. We have a second wireless, but at the outset, Ira will be coming around with the mic, and please wait for him to get to you. After being recognized with the microphone, give your name and speak in a loud voice into the microphone so that your comments may be heard by everyone. State law prohibits consideration of articles that have not been warned. They're dying. This means that you cannot take binding action under the article other business, and you cannot amend warned articles such that they would deal with business that has not been warned. Reconsideration of an article is allowed by state law until what point is reached where another article is under consideration. This means that if you have voted down an article, a motion can be made to reopen consideration of the article by a person on the prevailing side. And I will ask you, you have to have voted the article down in order to then request reconsideration of it. However, once the moderator has placed another article before you, no more action can be taken regarding the previous article at the meeting. My role as moderator is to help you accomplish the business you intend to do. Please raise your hand and ask questions. If you don't understand what is happening, if you think what is happening is wrong for some reason, or if you want to do something but don't know how to proceed. And please tell me if you feel I'm ruling it properly. The Assembly has the authority to overrule me if they disagree with my ruling. At this time, I'd ask anyone who is not a registered voter in Westminster to raise their hand. Okay, we have a number of folks, some from outside agencies, but thank you. I generally follow the honor system. I don't segregate on residents, but the ground rules are you don't get to vote and you don't get to address the assembly unless the assembly consents to that. So we do have some people from outside agencies who are here relative to articles that we will take up, and I expect they will be able to speak for that. Got that? That's the basic ground rules. Now, the formal opening. The legal voters of the town fire district number 3, town of Westminster, and to the extent that it still exists, the town school district, are hereby notified and warned to be at the Bellows Falls Union High School Auditorium in Westminster, Vermont on February 29, 2020 at 10 o'clock in the morning, 10 a.m., to take action on the articles following Article 1. The meeting will be recessed to Westminster Institute, East Parish, Vermont, to meet at 8 o'clock in the forenoon, 8 a.m., on Tuesday, March 3, 2020, for the consideration of Article 1 by Australian ballot. The polls shall remain open until 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m., at which time the meeting will recess to meet at the Bellows Falls Union High School Auditorium at 8 o'clock in the evening, 8 p.m. on Tuesday, March 3, 2020, to consider any remaining articles if necessary. That would be if you don't get through the full agenda today and there's anything. Article 1, which is the election article to choose all town fire district number 3 officers and town officers. There are no school district officers to vote for this time around. Town officers by Australian ballot, Tuesday, March 3, 2020, 8 o'clock in the forenoon, 8 a.m. until 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 p.m. That article gets dealt with on Tuesday. However, customarily, we allow people who are in contests or otherwise new to us to briefly introduce themselves to the assembly. There is one contested seat this year. Don Jones is running against Tony Young for a position on the select board. think you're familiar with Toby, but so I will ask Mr. Jones if he would like to briefly address the assembly. Ira, can you get him on the mic?
Thank you, Mr. Proctor. Good morning, everyone. My name is John Jones, as stated. I live in North Westminster. I've been a resident since my departure from military service. My children have grown up here, benefit from the school system. I have an undergrad in criminal justice with a concentration in emergency management and homeland security. So I understand some of the challenges we're facing, some of the budget issues we face every year. I've worked across all platforms of government, from the local to the state to the federal. And I just wanted to kind of jump into this election cycle and see if I could be a collaborator on board and help the community grow and prosper and build foundations for economic strategies and have our voice heard all the way up to the top. So thank you, Mr. Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Young, would you care to address the assembly?
When I was walking, this gentleman came over to me and said, "I'm John Jones." And I said, "Oh, do I know you?" And I had no idea I had somebody running against me, but I welcomed him. And now I know who he is. I've been on the board on and off since the 1970s. Taking time out because I was in the legislature, and I've lived in the town of Westminster since 1963. And my children were born while I was living here, and my grandchildren, and I now have some great-grandchildren. So it's been many years, and I love the town, and I'm hoping that I've always worked hard for it as a select board member. And it's nice to have people throwing their hats in the race, and hopefully we'll have a very nice encounter during this election time. Okay.
Thank you. There being no other contested races or new candidates, the next item up is the Fire District number 3 annual meeting. The Prudential Committee will come forward.
Yes, I do.
Article 3, Mr. Harlow. Mr. Christo. No, I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Harlow. Just, if you just move the article off. Article 3 is moved. Is there a second? Yes, there is a second. Raise your hand. Oh, tell us your name.
Katie Dearborn.
Katie. We all know that. Article 3, to see whether the town fire district number 3, wait a minute, we're on Article 2, right? Sorry, Mr. Green. Let's withdraw that and go back. Mr. Green. Would you please move Article 2?
I move Article 2 with Brendan.
Article 2, to hear the reports of the town fire district number 3 officers and take action thereon. Is there discussion of Article 3? Any questions for the Prudential Committee about their report, the Chief's report, anything? Article 2, excuse me. Mr. Harlow reminds me. Any discussion of Article 2? All those in favor of approving the reports of the Fire District Number 3 officers, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? The reports are approved. Article 3, Mr. Harlow.
I move Article 3 as written.
Article 3, to see whether the town fire district shall authorize and instruct its prudential committee and treasurer to borrow money, if necessary, to meet current expenses on the credit of the district in anticipation of the collection of taxes and/or the receipt of any state or federal funds. Is there a second for Article 3? Yes. We have a second, Article 3, discussion. Mr. Harley, Mr. Burke. I think it's a kind of no-brainer article. So, any questions for the Prudential Committee on Article 3? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 3 as written, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Article 3 is approved. Article 4, Mr. Hackett.
I move Article 4 as written.
Article 4, to see whether Town Fire District Number 3 shall raise and appropriate money to pay the indebtedness and other general expenses of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021, and if so, how much? Is there a second for Article 4? Article 4 is seconded. Mr. Hackett. Yeah.
The amount to be raised will be $266,700.
Mr. Hackett moves to amend Article 4 to insert in the amount of $266,700 right after the phrase June 30, 2021. If you want to look at the budget for the town, for the fire districts, it's on page 24 of your town report, which will show you where that number comes from. Is there discussion? There's an amendment. Is there a second to the amendment? Article 4 is, there is a second to the amendment. All those, I assume that the amendment is non-controversial. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The article is amended to include the $266,700 number. Mr. Hackett.
The increase this year is 3.6%. The majority of the increase centers around the increase in the firehouse bond payment. If you remember, a number of years ago, we had a refinancing that benefited the town. Now the amount has decreased with the benefit. But the good thing is, with the firehouse bond, we're now two payments away from that.
Any further discussion? Questions for the Prudential Committee? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 4 as amended, to see whether the town fire district number 3 shall raise and appropriate money to pay the indebtedness and general expenses of the district for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021 in the amount of $266,700. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Article 4 as amended is approved. Article 5, to transact, well, I don't generally ask for something. Article 5, to transact any other business property to be brought before the town fire district number 3 meeting. Is there other business to discuss?
First and foremost, I want to thank the members, all members of the department and their families for giving up a lot of your time over the year. The department's getting busier and busier, and as Senator White noted, it is getting more difficult to find volunteers. And I will say, I'm lucky the chairman of this department because we've had some really good success with membership, and I hope it continues throughout the next few years. I will note that in the coming years, we are going to be facing some capital needs. Most importantly, right now, we're looking at the possibility of a new rescue truck. That'll be the next year or so, and also some new equipment. But what we're going to be doing in the next year with the help of Mr. Jones, he has come forth. We're going to be looking at 3 grants for equipment and turnout gear, and also we're going to try to see if we can obtain a grant for the rescue truck, which would be a nice savings for the town. I just want to mention that.
Any further discussion or questions? Yes.
Hi, it's Jessie Haas. I just wanted to echo what you just said, and from all of us, I hope that the fire department really feels appreciated, because we depend on you so much, and we do deeply appreciate you.
Hear, hear.
Further discussion of the fire district or questions for the Prudential? Seeing none, motion to approve the report, actually no motion is necessary. If there's nothing further to discuss, that concludes the annual fire district meeting. Next up is the select board, the town. I can get the select board to come forward. Before we get into the next article, Ms. Harlow would like to make an announcement.
Yes?
You ready?
I'm presenting the Citizen of the Year. So, Sally Wright, could you come up, please? This is timely because Sally said she just got through the week from hell. So you may know Sally as a bus driver in town for more than 32 years until her so-called retirement 8 years ago. So you still see her driving the bus. Sally's been involved in many town organizations and volunteered in a lot of capacities. She's been a volunteer for Westminster Parish for almost 27 years and has delivered Meals on Wheels for all of those years. When Curtin Hatton, which makes the meals, was closed, Sally would make the meals at her house. She was also on the Westminster Cares board for 8 years. She's a member of the Second River Nature Club, and her love of cooking and baking has benefited many local organizations. You've probably tasted some of her wonderful food at the
Westminster Cares events, the Scouts, the PTA, and for the town's firefighters. So congratulations, Sally.
I've been a resident of Westminster West for 53 years. And out of those 53 years, I have driven the school bus for 42. I've driven my own children, my grandchildren, and now my great-grandchildren. And I'm amazed. Thank everybody. Thanks, everybody.
When my youngest started school, Sally was the bus driver that he was going to drive with, and I went to her and I said, Sally, you keep an eye on this kid, because he's watching everything you do, and he'll figure out how to make this bus ride during the back time. And she looked at me and she said, I know the time. And I knew he was in good hands. Moving on, Article 6. Mr. B.
I move the article is warned.
Article 6, to hear the reports of the town officers and take action thereupon. Is there any comment on Article 6? Yes, Ms. Mitchell.
I'm Martha, and I live, like many of us do, on a dirt road in Westminster. Mine happens to be in Westminster West, and I would like to first of all thank the road crew for their efforts. I would also like to suggest to the select board that they pay close attention to how the dirt roads are maintained, or, as the case may be, not maintained. I have heard a rumor that the select board is considering buying another 10-wheel dump truck. I strongly suggest you do not do that, because many of the roads, many of the dirt roads, are not capable of handling a 10-wheel dump truck. My own is a case in point. We have several stretches of road, one of which I affectionately refer to as the wallow, which several times a winter will have anywhere from 12 to 2 feet worth of mud, which this winter we have filled with unconsolidated material. For those of you who don't know a lot about soils, if you put unconsolidated material into water, it liquefies, which turns that wallow into a great big mud pie that will not solidify until all the water drains out. Also, on my road, the turnaround is not nearly big enough to take a 10-wheel dump truck. The big dump truck has taken out the mailboxes at the end of the road more than once. Back when we had telephone pedestals, it took out the telephone pedestals, and it has scarred the trees rather remarkably. Please maintain at least one or several smaller dump trucks. The 6-wheel dump trucks are good enough to go on the dirt roads. We also need some work done on maintaining the ditches. Westminster has just bought a roller with Rockingham, which I find kind of interesting, knowing the tax issues with the Rockingham Recycling Center. It'll be interesting to see how Westminster and Rockingham maintain this roller. If they can't figure out the taxes over the recycling center, what are we going to do with a roller that rolls the roads flat and unfortunately fills what's left of the ditches when it's rolled? We also might think about this tax issue when we get to another article later in the warning. I would strongly recommend that the town start getting some good material, crushed rock, for filling the wet spots. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. Further feedback to the select board relative to the reports or the actions of the town officers. Anything more? Declare Article 6 closed. Well, I guess. All those in favor of approving the reports of the town officers as commented upon, please say aye. Opposed, nay. Reports are accepted. Article 7. Now, Article 7 is going to be a little complicated to work through, and Mr. Hughes drew the short straw. Mr. Hughes.
Good morning, everyone. I have the short straw. I move the article of warrant.
Article 7, to see if the voters of the town of Westminster will raise and appropriate the sum of $2,232,411 to pay the indebtedness of the town, repair highways, and pay general expenses of the town for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020 and ending June 30, 2021. Is there a second for Article 7? Article 7 is moved and seconded. Mr. Hughes.
Thank you. I move to amend the article to change the sum to be raised and appropriated to $1,987,411.
Mr. Hughes moves an amendment to reduce the amount to be raised and appropriated to the sum of $1,987,411. Is there a second for that amendment? The amendment is moved and seconded. Mr. Hughes, would you care to address the amendment?
Thank you. At this point, I'd like to direct everyone to page 18 of the town report. Thank you. Article 7 is supposed to cover just the town's operating budget. There are two issues with the number printed in the warning. First, the fund for the Capital Equipment Reserve Fund, approximately $130,000, and the Bridge Reserve Fund, approximately $15,000, which are addressed separately in Articles 8 and 9, were inadvertently added to the operating budget total printed in the town report. Second, after public discussion at a recent select board meeting, the board also decided to recommend using $100,000 for unreserved fiscal 2019 surplus funds to further reduce the operating budget and offset taxes. Taking out the reserve funds, total of $145,000 approximately, and making the additional reduction from the unreserved surplus, $100,000, will decrease the base operating budget figure printed in the warning by approximately $245,000 to $1,987,411, of which $1,532,481 will be raised by taxes and approximately $454,930 by non-tax revenues.
So we have an amendment to reduce the amount printed in the warning by $245,000, and notwithstanding Mr. Hughes' somewhat alarming use of the word approximately, I think those numbers are exactly what we're talking about. Is there discussion on the amendment, the $245,000 reduction? Well, as explained by Mr. Hughes, the 145 comes from Article 8 and 9. It shouldn't be included in this number. And then the extra 100 is current unreserved surplus funds that they've just got sloshing around in the bank, I guess. So a reduction of 245,000 is the proposed amendment. Further discussion, Ms. Dearborn.
I think it's important for folks to know where that 100,000 that you're referring to is coming from. I did attend a select board meeting recently and the information was there. I know that Fact TV covered it as well. But I think there's some history to that 100,000 that the body here is entitled to know. I know we're all busy, we can't attend meetings, but we're all here today. And I'm sure you're all scratching your head as to where that 100,000, why is there? And I think that the select board, the chair, Hugh, or Kevin Hughes can directly give some information on that. And I think that it's appropriate for us to hear.
The board is interrogated. Do you wish to comment on the source of the $100,000? Or further explain it?
Our surplus.
I guess the board doesn't understand the question. If we have, in the end of the year, when we go into another year, we have a balance left over, a surplus, we look at it, address it, we're going to address it for and other things down on other articles too, but we decided to, as you were there, take 100 of it, at least move it over.
But there was a discussion leading up to that, and that's what I was hoping that the body here would hear, was there was a discussion about the 100,000 and things that had transpired. If you don't.
There was a discussion that led up to that, and Kevin referenced that at our meeting. There was a discussion that led to that 100,000. We can talk about it another time, but I think that folks, you didn't just arbitrarily come up with 100,000. We had a discussion about a previous amount of money that was an article in previous years that was voted down, that money was moved and then not moved back. And so we felt in that discussion, my takeaway was that you were going to look to rectify it, which is why now it's presented to us as a surplus coming back to us. If I'm wrong, I apologize, but that was my interpretation of the select board meeting that I attended. I wasn't able to attend the one last week, but during that meeting I read the minutes, and at that point is when the board decided to go ahead and give the 100,000 back. So I guess what I want everyone here to know is that the reason that there's discussion is because there were a few residents that came to the select board meeting and brought some information that then was discussed. It wasn't action that's coming directly from the board. It was action that occurred based on people attending the select board meeting, which now they're taking action on.
Response?
No, that is, I appreciate your very succinct analysis of that, and that meeting is on Fact TV and on the record for you to review and look at, and that's exactly why we're taking the action that we're taking today, and we all certainly appreciate your presence and Cynthia's actions as well, Cynthia Stoddard, and others, everyone that were there to make sure that this was properly, not only properly done, but properly vetted, I guess is a good word. And again, you appreciate exactly how you put it, couldn't have put it any better, and everyone here can go to the meeting. It should be on the website, I think it is, and it was reported by Fact TV.
Further comments? Yes.
Rachel Cohen, I just have a question. I'm looking on page 11 at the end of year surplus line for fiscal year 19 and 20, and I see a 0 there. So where's that surplus show on the budget? maybe to say, why doesn't it show up as a surplus?
It was printed before we took action to correct it.
Further discussion? Ira, behind you.
Railways, and I would like to know exactly how much surplus we've had, because we've talked about this for a few years, and it's not in the book. You're telling us 100,000, but what's the rest of it?
I think if you go to page 55 of the accounting report rail, in the audit report, it says 550,430, minus the 100,000 that we voted to reduce taxes at the last meeting, so that makes 450. And we're going to address that in the next. Right, well, we're going to talk about. Yeah, we'll have more discussion of that after we vote on this one. Does that make sense? Did you find it in the audit report?
If you look at page 55, the very bottom down, literally the last line.
The general fund balance component has a fund balance of $550,430. That's at the end of the audit.
Ms. Stoddard.
What is the procedure for at least just getting the vote on the amendment on the floor so we can have further discussion about that? Do I call a question? I don't, yes? I have something to say about the actual vote once we pass this amendment that we're on.
Yeah, once we get the number down to where, what they're actually proposing, we will have discussion on the main motion, which is wide open on the budget.
Okay, so
Okay, are
let's
you
do
ready for the question on the amendment?
Yeah.
Just the $245,000 reduction in the number in the main motion. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The article is amended to reduce the amount to be raised and appropriated to $1,987,411. We're now back to discussion of the main motion. Ms. Stein.
So I just want to get to what I think Katie was trying to say is if you're not familiar what has transpired over the last couple weeks at the meetings, I'm just going to try to be as brief as I can so that I can address why my vote today for the budget is going to be no. And I would encourage everybody else to do the same thing today. I'm not voting no because I oppose the content of the budget. It's because I'm not comfortable with the handling of the surplus. I've been involved in extensive conversations with the board and town manager over the last few weeks about this issue, and I believe they're trying to correct the mistakes made regarding that $550,000 surplus and the use of the funds for the town hall renovation. To give you just a brief history of what, if you haven't been following, the things that I found and that we have discussed are, and my concerns have been, the vote that Katie was talking about, which was 2 years ago in March of 2017. They placed $100,000 of the FY16 surplus into the capital improvement fund. We voted on that in 2017 for something that had already been done, and I cannot find where that money has been moved back after that article failed. I've been given an explanation that I didn't understand, and I haven't had an attempt for anybody to show me further. That money has since been spent on town hall renovations. The second thing that bothered me was that there was a fund balance policy adopted last year at town meeting. It was not discussed during this budget prep for this budget, and I was told that the intent was to put the money aside in the emergency fund as outlined by that policy, once the town hall renovations were done, when they knew how much fund balance they would have left. I feel very misled by the intent of that policy, and I think there's a complete lack of understanding. There has been some discussion with the town attorney since that was relayed to me the other day. I was told that at last year's town meeting, the voters approved the spending of the surplus on town hall renovations. It was not noted in the minutes, and it wasn't warned. I watched the video in an attempt to understand why there would have been a consensus among the administration that the voters had approved it. There was discussion about it under other business, but it was brief, and as a matter of fact, John Ewald asked when they were going to come back to the voters for permission. That question was never answered at that meeting. At the last select board meeting, it was agreed by everyone in attendance that the discussion that happened did not constitute an approval of that spending. It was also discovered during my questioning that a contract had been signed for the town hall renovations in the amount of $235,000, and the select board had not formally approved that at a board meeting. They have since done that. These things have bothered me, so I called the Secretary of State's office and asked what recourse we have as voters. We have two options. We can go to court. I don't want to do that. Or we can use our vote as our voice. After some productive conversations and debates in the last couple weeks, and although I appreciate the gesture of giving us back some of the surplus to help lower our tax rate or stabilize it, and that you will be holding a special town meeting, as you said at the last select board meeting, to address the town hall renovation question. I don't want any of it to be done in haste. So I've come to the conclusion for my vote today that if we're going to have a special town meeting anyways, then why not vote on this budget, vote a no on this budget, and give you guys time to do some really thoughtful planning about that surplus. Give us really accurate numbers on what is left for the project of the town hall. How much do you want to put in that emergency fund? If you're going to reduce taxes, what's that going to do to our rate 1 year, and what will happen to it in the next year? Are there other road projects that we've been putting off that some of the surplus could be used for? I also think that there should be money put in the budget for a finance director position so that we have someone with experience in government and fund accounting to keep all of this straight. This may mean a shift in how the finance department is set up, but that difficult conversation has to happen. I don't want a never-ending supply of surplus to be spent on any pet project that comes up. I don't want a never-ending supply of surplus that is a cushion for projects that might have cost overruns. I want those cost overruns managed. Projects need to be budgeted before they happen, not during. I really want to see a more permanent solution, and that's why I have to say that I cannot vote yes on the budget today.
Ms. Stoddard speaks in opposition to the budget, which is the main motion, which is now under consideration. I will note it is contrary to Robert's Rules of Order to read from a printed text. I think in this context, where you're really dealing with a lot of numbers and a lot of complexity, I didn't see a reason to try and stop that. But in general, it's good form to just speak extemporaneously. Further discussion of Article 7, now amended to 1.987. Mr. Moderator? Yes. Mr. Major? And thank you for calling.
This is Stephen Major. I do appreciate the seriousness of Cynthia Stoddard's concerns. I have questions just on a smaller item. However, on page 15, there is a couple of things I just want to understand about the budget, where basically money was budgeted for 2019, and again budgeted for larger in 2020, but not actually expended to that degree. One is this towards the top, the salary of the animal control officer, a amount budgeted of $2,750. Now we're budgeting $3,500, but we only spent $188. I was wondering whether we had an animal control officer and what the issue was there. And on a somewhat larger scale, on the town garage, wages budgeted last fiscal year, $335,000. Again, budgeted for $335,000, but we only expended $251,000, which is a lot less. Perhaps we're missing somebody there too. I was wondering if those two questions could be answered.
Can the board respond to Mr. Baker? Town manager will respond.
The animal control officer position is in kind of a quandary. We have one, but she's not active, so we are in the position to start talking to Wyndham County Sheriff with a 3-town collaboration type thing. They have just barely started conversations amongst themselves, and they're going to pass that information on to us to see if we can get Wyndham County Sheriff to cover this important for the town. As for the other one, Steve, you need to add the overtime, holiday, sick, vacation, and call-in pay to that number for the wage line. I inherited this form, but that's how it's always been done. And if you notice, under the budget, it's 0. So hence, you have to add those figures together to get that the math for that line item.
Further discussion of Article 7 as amended. Further questions for the board? Yes, Mr. Mento, Ira. I saw Jim first, but we'll get back up there in a second.
Thank you. Jim Manto. Regarding to the information about the surplus and the potential special town meeting, it seems to figure out how one feels about that. One would need to know what's the plan for when to have that town meeting, that special meeting. Otherwise, we'd be in the dark as to what that proposal is. So if there isn't a plan to right now as to when to have it, I think we probably need to know pretty darn soon.
You have a target date.
Well, we need 30 days warning to warn it, and it takes a couple of weeks to get the advertising out, so we're thinking mid-April. I was going to invest this after the budget.
The answer right now is shoot for mid-April. Further discussion, Mr. Jones?
This is probably for Russ, but on the same topic on page 17, talking about the wages and the overtime, holiday pay, sick leave, where I see we've carried it as not a budget line. I think we can do some horizontal analysis on that and carry that as a percentage so that the taxpayers can say, okay, these are the burdens that our highway face when they're out there. They're going to have overtime, they're going to be sick, and these are going to come up every year. And I think that would be a healthier approach to stabilizing the bottom line on our accounts when we look at the year dates, just when we do kind of a probability analysis. So I just wanted to ask Russ if there's a problem with the software, he can't change that. I think that's what I was taking away from his comments a few minutes ago.
Absolutely not. It's just a request that you want to see it differently in the report.
So you can carry that as a budget on all these items that we have the zero budget, that we see an expenditure. You can forecast that for the town.
We can take the history and forecast it, yes, we can. Yes, Ms. Young.
I hope I'm going to be able to explain something that is going to be unusual. We have had, as Cynthia explained, there's been a problem with the budget and with the surplus. And just go, okay, there we go. Cynthia explained something to us, and we had our last meeting and found that there was a lot of serious stuff that we needed to address. It seems to me now, and I'm hoping that everybody is in agreement up here, that it's going to be hard to pass a budget that is, let me put it this way. We have decided that there will be a special town meeting, and the budget will be different at that point, at least in explanation. We have a $550,000 surplus. We need to allocate, use that surplus and ask for permission from you in the way that we use it. We did not have that. That is the problem. And as Cynthia said, she's going to vote against this budget. And it would be my recommendation, in view of the fact that we are going to have a special town meeting, that this budget be voted down.
Well, that's a no.
Can I ask you this?
That's their own budget.
Fletcher, can I ask you what rules, if we turn the budget down, what happens to all the articles? Would we actually leave the meeting with the articles in the budget that is there?
Well, if you turn the budget down, you're just voting down Article 7. Everything else, if you
So we pass all
certain
the
articles 8 and 9, we still consider them.
So we would have a town meeting where we have the articles already passed, so we would have to come to that, but we have.
Just be for a budget article.
So we'd have to still approve, raise the money to pay for the articles. You see what I'm saying? We can't leave and not approve money to pay for the articles that just got passed.
Well, yeah, the money articles you've got this for your operating budget, Article 7, but you've got 8 and 9 for other reserve funds.
So we've always added those to the bottom line to revenue.
Well, numerically, yeah, when you figure out how much you just spent, yeah, they get added together, but they're legally separately considered articles. So they would still, if they pass separately, they
So
pass.
each one, we raise the money to pay each article.
Yep. Let's look at it. To Article 9, raise and appropriate somehow for bridge rate rehab. Those articles stand on their own. Further discussion of Article 7 as amended. Mr. Whitburn.
I've actually never been at a Westminster town meeting where we defeated the budget, but is it really true that there's only one motion considered for any article? I thought if we voted the budget down, then the article remains open and the motion gets defeated, and we have to consider another motion until some action has been taken, unless there's a motion to table the article.
Well, you could move.
I move to table the article.
Hang on. There's a couple of different ways you can table an article. You either table it open-ended, as you just did, which is the same as killing the article. Or you move to postpone the article to a date certain, which means the date of the special meeting. I don't know if they're in a position to pick a date right now, but the 45 days, if somebody wants to pull out a calendar and they want to commit to a date, your motion could be to postpone consideration of this article to that date. Either way, well, actually, if we postpone it to a date certain, and it's still an open article, we're not actually having to specially warn it, I don't think. We could pick it up sooner if they think they'd be ready for the discussion. I'm still dealing with Mr. Wickford's motion, so, and mostly thinking out loud. I think we could, if we can pick a date, we could move to postpone consideration of this article to a date certain. I'm feeling a little nervous about whether we have to have separate warning. We have to have separate warning. We've got to give the full 30 days plus the time to get it in the paper and all of that. That's what drives the 45 days. I'm not sure, since the operating budget is about expenses that accrue in the next fiscal year. This operating budget doesn't actually kick in to spend money until July 1. So I'm not sure that playing parliamentary games to try and move the date, we're probably safest to just push it off the 45 days. But, so I think I just talked myself into either postpone it, you table it, you need to postpone it indefinitely, which kills it for this meeting, and it cannot be taken up again until the new meeting is warned with the full 30 days. Or we just vote it down and they have to deal with it. Maybe postponing is a little clearer that the meeting really does expect them to come back with something new. I kind of doubt that the select board would just leave the town with no budget and go home. But you may be a little safer to have this motion to postpone. Now I gotta look at my cheat sheet to see what the priority is on a motion to postpone. Postpone indefinitely.
Point of order.
I'm dealing with a point of order. It's not a privileged motion, so I think we can postpone indefinitely. Doesn't actually need a second, it's a straight up majority vote.
Still point of order.
Point of order on point of order. Yeah.
Well, just simple,
Mike
Daly, Fletcher, aren't we on the amendment?
No, we adopted the amendment. We just got to we're dealing with the main motion.
My apology, okay.
Postpone indefinitely. The data rule doesn't need a second straight up majority vote. Mr. Wickford has made a motion to postpone indefinitely, or does that sound correct, Mr. Wickford?
Yeah.
Okay, postpone indefinitely. Discussion on Mr. Wickford's motion. Yes, Ms. Stoddard.
I guess I just want to clarify why, I think either way, we're going to end up at the same conclusion. We will have to come back another day to discuss the budget. The reason I'm saying voting no, and I would vote against postponing whatever that term is that I just want to give them a chance to go back and maybe reword the article that's warned for the new meeting with very clear numbers of what it is that they're doing after they have a chance to review the budget, look at the surplus, maybe talk to the accountant, do some real thoughtful planning, if we postpone it, will it not just be the same article we're looking at today, and we're gonna have to go through this whole thing again?
You're absolutely correct. If it's
Okay.
postponed indefinitely, it's a zombie. It comes
So I
back
would vote
and
against postponing.
Okay, further discussion on the proposal to postpone, Ms. Gifford.
Personally, I prefer to postpone to a date certain and to have it be at a warned meeting. Is it correct that at that point, the board could rewrite the proposal? Or is any form of postponement going to be zombie coming back?
My interpretation is any form of postponement just brings the same thing back, and in the state of West Virginia, postponed.
Then I also oppose that, and I would much prefer to listen to our board who's telling us to vote no on this.
Mr. Wickler, can you resolve this for us?
Well, you'll remember I started with a question, which is about the relationship between motions and articles. If we vote down the motion, are we done considering the article? Because if that's true, then there's effectively no difference between postponing and voting no. Or is the article still open even though the motion has been defeated?
If we vote down the article, it's wide open. And what Ms. Stoddard was suggesting is that this gives them time to regroup and perhaps come back with something clearer at the next meeting. The slate is clean. If you vote it down and they want to have a budget, they got to come back with something, and hopefully it'll be a good explanation.
So you don't consider a second motion on the same article. If we vote no, we're moving on to the next article. You're saying one motion is one article.
At a time. You can have as many motions to amend, you can have 100 of them. You just can't stack them. But that was, right now, we've got, and maybe I pushed you into a position you didn't want to be in, which is a motion to postpone, which was the best I could get out of your alternatives. Do you want to postpone, or are you just voting, just suggesting?
No, I really want to know, if we vote no right now, are we moving on to the next article?
Yes, we are.
Okay, then I withdraw the motion.
The motion to postpone is withdrawn. Back to the main motion. And Ms. Stoddard has spoken against the motion. Is there other, or the article, we're on the main article. Is there, Mr. Beebe would like to be heard.
I would like to address this group in the sense that this is a surplus from the town budget. It's not money that's been thrown away. It's not money that's being wasted. It's money that's actually in the bank at this point, collecting interest. This board has not decided what to do with this surplus. Maybe that's bad on our point, that we haven't come up with exact numbers for Cynthia and for Ms. Dearborn. But it hasn't been spent frivolously. We haven't put it in our pockets. It's money that's a surplus that's been derived from delinquent taxes being collected that hadn't been collected for some time. It's good practice within the town of paying bills and getting grants, etc. That's how you get surpluses, is you get money back. You don't expect it, but you get it back. So as you look at this, granted, we haven't done anything with this surplus, and we've already given $100,000 of it back to the taxpayer, which puts it down to $450,000. Still a good chunk of change to decide what to do with it. But we haven't been frivolous with it, and we haven't done anything that was against the good graces of the town of Westminster as far as I'm concerned. I think we've done a good job, and we have this surplus. It's in the audit. It shows in the audit. We aren't trying to hide anything. And Granted, we haven't made the best choice as far as what to do with this surplus, but we haven't wasted it. We haven't thrown it away. So it's still there. So, you know, however you guys vote on what to do with this surplus, that's up to you. And if you want us to go back and rework the budget, that's fine. That's what we're going to do. But, you know, as far as saying, you know, well, geez, where's this money? Where's it going to go? What are you going to do with it? We've never done anything with surplus that wasn't for the good of the town. I want you to remember that. Thank you.
I also might throw in a little history that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it dates back to Irene. Because we had a long wrangle with FEMA to get reimbursed for some of the big expenses, some of the bridge replacements and big culverts. And we've pretty much given up on getting the money back from them. They finally sent us a check for $300,000. And ever since, we've sort of had this rolling surplus issue that has never been nailed down. And I think that's the sense I'm getting from you folks, is like to see a little more clarity on that. But I think, well, it reminds me of something my mother used to say when she would see somebody on the street who was talking to themselves. She'd say, must have money in the bank. I think everybody's wrestling with the issue. It's got it.
I totally appreciate what our chair has said. That is absolutely true. The problem with the surplus, it's actually, we're not apologizing for having a surplus. I think that's a good thing to have. The problem is that what we spend on it is not necessarily the decision that we can make without getting a response from, a vote from the town. For example, we are now doing the work on the town hall, and we were assuming that we could use some of that money to finish the job. But we never asked for the specific permission for the dollars. And I think that the only way we can rectify that, and this is the problem that Ms. Stoddard pointed out, it is a problem. And we've done some investigation, and we have discovered that she is absolutely right. We were wrong to make the decisions that we were making. And so the only way that I think that we can rectify this is to redo the request for the money and actually set up, identify exactly what we want to do with the money and ask your permission for it. And that would have to go into another town meeting, and this is why we're doing that. We cannot do it tonight. We cannot we cannot say we need this kind of money for something that we did not warn. That cannot be done. So that is the reason that a new town meeting would have to be done. And we would, at that point, be asking exactly how much money we will need for the town hall, how much money we will need for other things. I guess that's the best way I can describe it, and I think it's the right way to do it. That's what I have.
Let me ask you this. If we, as a town, vote this down Article 7, and then going back to, we're going to now have another meeting. And these articles, anyone that's able, can it be put back on that agenda?
No.
And if there's an article defeated, they can't come back and put it. something similar on.
That would be a whole separate, if somebody wanted to try and force a special town meeting on some issue that you folks didn't bring forward, they'd have to do petitioning and do it, and it would be on a completely separate track.
So when we meet here, we would be telling these people that at the town meeting, this would be the only thing we're going to discuss would be the budget in Article 7.
Unless you want to also put in, if you guys have your discussion and you decide, we really ought to set up some other reserve funds or we want to do some other stuff. But yeah, you're just dealing with your budget and whatever money's in the bank.
That's my question. I want to make sure that the select board has a right to add another article if we wanted to that meeting.
I believe so. And I mean, you could, by voting this article down and you have a special meeting, you could rewrite this article any way you want. And there's no reason why you can't add other articles. You get whatever makes sense to you to resolve these questions about money. I think I would encourage you to come up with a good solution. If it makes more than one article, so be it.
So when we have this meeting, all these articles are passed, we would start the meeting with this and never have those numbers in there since they're already done.
The articles that are past history. You can't, once we move on, once I put the next article on the board, the previous article that's it. It's locked in. So, Article 7, as amended, $1,987,411. We have further discussion of the operating budget article. Ms. Dearborn.
So I just want to take a minute and echo some of what Sheldon said. I don't think that there's any wrongdoing by anyone on the board. I don't think there's misappropriation of money. I think that what I've seen transpire is that there is spending of money that is not coming before the voters that are here. And I think there was a surplus policy or a reserve fund policy that was adopted last year. From attending the select board meeting, that fund has never been funded. So you all approved a reserve fund policy, which would dictate how much of that general fund balance that we had, how much was going to go into it. And I want everyone here to know that they, for whatever reason, chose not to fund it. So that means all the money just sits in our general fund, and a lot of the improvements that have been done to the town hall have been coming out of that, which is why they have to have a special meeting to come back to us to say, we spent all of this money, we need to have it approved, quite honestly. There also was findings that the contractor that's doing the work on the town hall, that contract was never approved by the select board. So there's more administrative problems than money moving where it should. And I'm curious to know if the board is going to take action and what your steps will be just to make sure that this doesn't continue. Having a special meeting cost us money. We're all here today, we want to do business, and I really want to ensure that going forward, if community members do take a look at audit reports or budgets, that we're not going to find ourselves in this position. And I think it would be important for us to hear what steps the board wants to take to ensure that things like this don't go forward. I also think that it would be helpful prior to the special meeting for us to have some of the budget numbers that you're preparing, whether it be a certain amount of money that's going to go into that reserve policy, and in addition to how much money have we spent on the town hall. I was hearing that we had $190,000 worth of work that needed to be done. I read some minutes, it looked like it was $90,000. I don't know how much we've spent, but I'm fairly certain that fund balance is completely depleted. So that is coming out of our general fund, which is the surplus money that everyone's talking about.
Thank you, Katie. Again, this was discussed. We discussed it when you were there and brought this up. Again, thank you for your excellent analysis. One of the things we began to discuss and needs to be discussed is, and I just want to oversight, I look at this town as a volunteer. This is my first director on the board, everyone here, I genuinely believe, treats everyone with respect, wants to do everything best for the town. And there will be new people that come up behind us. When we look at the discussion we've had extensively over, I've been told, over a decade or more on town renovations, this goes back to the records. We began this discussion, and the record rule. Now, I'm not going to get into the weeds on it, but to directly answer your question, this board will take a very serious look at making sure that our books and records, meaning what was voted on by you, and I was sitting out there most of the time also doing the exact same thing, is not only kept in a record that is clear, concise, and coherent, but it is something that the board and those that come after us who weren't on the board for 2, 4, 8, 6 years ago have a much clear, concise, and easy access to those records. Right now, our record keeping, or the records that we utilize, for example, President Recollection Refresh, to take a look at this, are not where they should be. And I'm not saying that when I first got on the board, my view was always this town was here for 300 years before I got here. They'll be here 300 years when I'm gone or more. So it tends to take care of itself. So no one's saying completely restructure what we're doing, but it's certainly time to take a look and have a clear discussion over addressing some of these deficiencies. And there are deficiencies. And looking at the rule, there's a rule that says when we take minutes, whether it's here or at our meeting, the minutes should cover topics and motions that arise at the meeting and give true indication of the business of the meeting. We're not obligated at this point to provide anything other than, for those who come past us, a short, brief synopsis of what goes into it. And without that, there's a lot of predicate information that is lost. You've all seen it in regular life. I know in my business we see it. Well, this happened. Well, how do we know it really happened? Do we have a clear record? That's exactly what was stated. So the answer to Katie's question is, the board will consider with open meetings and allowing everyone to know just how to fix some of these deficiencies. That should go from the full gamut: accuracy, timeliness, dated records, maybe even going back and trying to make a more concrete synopsis, and also review all of our policies that affect spending. Because I agree with what Sheldon said. I think everybody here comes in with the best idea, with the best intention to do what's best for the town and for taxpayers, because we're all taxpayers. But we also must review our conflict of interest rules up to that. Those things that affect also ethics, those things that affect cost analysis. These things need to be, in the very least, reviewed and shored up. Because, as I mentioned, the longevity of this town proves that. There's a lot to be said for that. Policies work. Sometimes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But we believe it is time for a very healthy review of how these things are done. From the full start, how they're voted on, how we get approval, all the way up to who do we pay in the town, who has to disclose conflict of interest for everything that we do, and have an accurate, surveillable budget for you in a timely manner that's accurate, so that you're not left with additional anxiety at any point over whether or not your board did what you're supposed to do, did it timely, did it competently, and is not taking taxes and utilizing resources that not only you didn't intend to be utilized, but also that we could be spending perhaps someplace else. So I really want to thank Kathy for bringing that up, because it's incredibly important. And these are discussions. No one's talking about writing up a whole bunch of new rules. It's that we think it's time to actually go into this to review them, because it's time to review them, because they have not been reviewed seriously in quite some time. So I hope that goes somewhat to alleviating the important point that you brought up. Thank you.
Further discussion, yes. Yes. Just talk right, give us your name.
Bruce Barker, H-Tech. We spent 90 minutes on this, 2 prior select board meetings, with discussion on the same, and so far, seems to be like what we started on. Sooner or later, after 90 minutes, seems like possibly take some action. Move on.
I'm going to take that as a motion to call the question. Yeah, well, can I take one more comment, but then Mr. Parker's motion will be on address. Yes, up in the back.
Tim Hardy, first I wanted to say thank you to Cynthia and Katie. I think it's important that people are watching this and by Mr. Hughes and we're going to have a good resolution. But I'm just curious about wages for the town garage. If we have such a large surplus, I'm just surprised over the last 3 years we're talking just over a 2% raise. I might be a little biased on that, but I think we could add a little more to those town workers that are working hard. Thank you.
Mr. Parker has called the question. I think that's a non-debatable 2/3 majority. All those in favor? No, you don't require a second. All those in favor of voting on Article 7, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? I think we have a 2/3 majority. Article 7, as amended, to see if the voters of the town of Westminster will raise and appropriate the sum of $1,987,411 to pay the indebtedness of the town, repair highways, and pay general expenses of the town for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, and ending June 30, 2021. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay? Nay. Nays appear to have it. Nays do have it. Article 7 is defeated. And I think it's time for lunch. We will recess for 45 minutes.